One of the hardest things in game design is coming up with a great idea. But what if I said there's a hidden hack that makes it 100 times easier for you? Yeah, no joke. And last month I attended PAX to figure out what that was. But not PAX East or PAX West like you might be thinking. PAX Unplugged. Which, as its name implies, is all about board games and tabletop. So now you might be wondering two things. One, Kunik, why did you take a month to make this video? And two, what do board games have to do with game design? Great questions. Firstly, I caught something while I was at PAX and it took me out of commission for a few weeks. Secondly, board games and tabletop and all of that ties into video games way more than what you might think. We owe more than just a little bit to the genres they've helped create. And that's what sparked the idea for this video. For just one example, take Dungeons & Dragons. Richard Garriott was inspired to create the Ultima series around it, and Surtech created wizardry around it at about the same time. And those games were the very first instance we ever had for things we take for granted nowadays. Stats, quests, classes, all of that came from these two games trying to adapt a very popular tabletop RPG. And those two games ultimately inspired the likes of Mass Effect, The Elder Scrolls, Fallout, Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest, and honestly, I can go on for hours. And in fact, I am planning a video series about the origin of a lot of the most popular video game genres out there. So coming eventually, don't know when. But after the 1980s, we kind of stopped borrowing ideas from board games and tabletop and just started doing our own thing in video game development. So I ask, why? Board games are one of the most creative industries out there. There's thousands of ideas for us to borrow from. Why did we stop doing that? And that's exactly why I went to PAX. I ended up finding a few developers that take ideas from video games and bring them to their board games. And so I thought, if they're able to do that, maybe through an interview, we can glean how they do that and then apply that in the reverse, taking from board games and bringing them to video games. At least that's the theory. So without any further ado, let's hear what they have to say.
So my name is Spencer Campbell. I am part of Gila RPGs. I guess I'm all of Gila RPGs.
My name is Tim Nierziewski. I'm the designer of Etherspire for Phase Shift Games.
So my name is Chris Kingsnorth. I'm the lead developer at Paper 4 Games.
My name is Justin Achille. I am Chief Creative Officer here at Studio Hermitage.
I've been doing tabletop role-playing game designs for 5 years now.
I've been designing games for basically my whole life, but this game has been in the works for about 5 years.
I've been doing this as my full-time job for about 3.5 years.
We've been in business for just about 3 years. We started working on tabletop role-playing games as an introduction to a full transmedia brand that ultimately is going to culminate in a video game that we're working on right now.
Most of the video games that I translate to the table are things where you have a small suite of powers that you get to do over and over and over again. And it's sort of that power fantasy that I enjoy playing at the tabletop. So that's the sort of stuff that I've been trying to translate. One of the biggest things is that when you start playing a video game, you start playing the game right away. And that's a big hurdle for a lot of tabletop games, is there's this long learning process of the rules and creating your characters. And by the time you're playing, hours have passed. And so I want games to be fast. You're playing it at the table immediately.
So this is a tower defense board game in many ways, because you are trying to build up your defenses. So in order to figure out how enemies should come in, we tried many different things. First, what I tried were tracks that had different layers. So you're seeing, all right, in 4 turns, a fire invader is going to come and moving towards the fortress in that way. What I found was that wasn't leading the suspense that I wanted. It was more just another variable to track. So just what the real levers to pull were how often new invaders were directly coming in. So what happens now is you pull in invaders and they go to rooms of their elements.
So when you're looking for a video game IP to convert into a tabletop space, there are a number of things that make it a good candidate. One of them is, does it feel kind of like a board game already? So are there any of the mechanics that feel mechanism like, does this video game have elements of building bases or sending workers out to do things or dungeon crawling? Those kind of elements are really helpful.
Things like press your luck mechanics. At the table, players are always willing to kind of, spend a willpower point and get a little bit more. In the Our Brilliant Ruin game, you can spend passion and get extra dice, but then it comes at a risk of eventually all your passion comes back to haunt you and create these terrible results. But I also like in video games where you kind of coaxing the player to go one level deeper, or, oh, keep pushing forward, you've almost got the enemy there. And that way the player feels like they've really accomplished something if it pays off, but also it gives them a sense of revenge if they fail, so that those kind of emotional stakes push higher either way.
I had a big team of additional writers who helped me with that process, because me on my own, looking at my spreadsheets of all the different numbers, I was starting to lose it. And so thankfully I had a lot of friends who also love looter shooters, love role-playing games, and we worked together in terms of writing the loot and finding ways to sort of create these dynamic changing loot pools that didn't crash the balance right away, but sort of mimic that experience of just getting cool loot rained on you and that slow progression higher and higher.
Balance for this game has been all over the place because everyone wants something different from a cooperative game. Some people want something they can consistently beat. Some people will hate a game if they beat it the first time. So I've gotten to try this. I've gotten to try this with so many different groups and finding that frustration point. Because you want people to feel like they have control over the game. You don't want them to play the game and feel like there was nothing I could have done anyways.
So when we're playtesting, we have a mix of groups. We do internal playtesting. We externally playtest with people who may not have played the video game to test the kind of board game mechanics, because we want this to be a game for people who haven't played Terraria as well. But one of the most fantastic things we had access to were players of Terraria, the video game. We actually recently did a playthrough with Chippy, who's a Terraria YouTuber, who happens to just live an hour away from our office. And we had the chance to, for the first time, with no preparation, to sit down and play this game with Chippy. And Chippy doesn't play board games, but does know Terraria very, very well. And that was such an informative and useful piece of feedback. And to be told it feels like Terraria by someone who really knows Terraria is the greatest thing. We also, because we did this through crowdfunding, we had the opportunity to get lots of feedback from fans during the process too. The rule book has gone through fans, all of these things people have had a chance to feedback on. And one of the most useful things, probably midway through development, that we were fed back on that wasn't quite working was originally, though this is sandboxy, there wasn't really a pressure to finish the game. It could have theoretically gone on forever. And that's where we got the idea of this threat track, which there isn't a threat track in Terraria, the video game, but as a dangerous world, it feels like it's not disingenuous to be like, hey, actually, yeah, if you leave things and you don't deal with them, it gets more threatening. And that was something that we had from playtesters that we then put into the game. So that was super, super helpful, and probably the single most useful thing to be like, oh, that kind of that fixes the fact that it was dragging.
When we first started the studio, Embracer had come to us through a group of theirs called Amplifier Game Invest, and they wanted specifically us to build a new IP from the ground up and use that to feed people into, ultimately, the core business of the video game. And so with my experience and background in tabletop games, we started exactly there. We used the tabletop RPG as the world Bible and the art Bible, and that was intended to serve both as a playable game that players could get into early on to help build community, but also it answers a lot of questions for the video game. What do the monsters look like? What do the factions behave like? What are the skills like? What are the stakes for the world? So ultimately, it's all supposed to come back to the video game, and we've just used our expertise in those other media as well to help realize it.
So my advice to anybody that's trying to translate video games to the tabletop is to try and avoid translating most of the video game to the tabletop. Video games have the advantage of being able to have code in the background that runs a lot of things. And either your option is find a way to translate that code into GM or Game Master material so that they can run it like a simulation, or realize that that's an advantage that the video game space has, but we have an advantage in the tabletop space of not being linked to code and not being linked to set loops. And so find that sort of freedom that tabletops have and embrace that in your design rather than trying to simply one-to-one recreate the experience at the tabletop.
I am proud that this uses 3D in a meaningful way. The invaders come in top down, so the highest thing of their element always matters. There are some 3D games out there that will have 3D pieces that don't actually add anything to gameplay, they just look cool. But the fact that the height and positioning really do matter. I am proud that I was able to make a strategy game, not a dexterity game, that really made that important.
Just to say thank you to everybody who backed us on Kickstarter, all of the people that have given feedback and been enthusiastic and come and met us at conventions. Huge thanks to Relogic, absolutely fantastic team to work with, and it's been a privilege to do this. I would say that we're about to fulfill the Kickstarter, which is exciting, so fans will be getting their hands on this very soon. There will be a retail version of this coming as well in the next year or so, which will be a slightly lower price point, but there'll be no missing gameplay. So if you haven't got on board at this point, you'll still have a chance to do that. And we're hoping to translate it into various languages too. So if you're not a native English speaker, you will not miss out on the opportunity to play Terraria the board game.
The most important thing that I like to talk about whenever I introduce anyone to Our Brilliant Ruin is the fact that the tabletop RPG is always free. You can get the Art Bible, World Bible for the world. It's a playable game. It's always free at Drive-Thru RPG, and we'll provide a link to that so you can. We'll fix this in post.
All right, I'd like to extend a very special thank you to those who I interviewed. I'm going to read from a list right now, so I'm not staring directly at the camera. Spencer Campbell, Tim Mirjawiski, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right, Chris Kingsnorth, and Justin Achille. Thank you all from the bottom of my heart for allowing me to interview you. I'm just some no-name YouTuber, and you guys took some very significant amount of time out of your convention schedule to interview with me, so it honestly means the world. Now, getting all of my equipment to and from PAX was no easy feat, not to mention a little expensive. So if you appreciate the effort that I've gone into for this video, and you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel, as well as liking the video to help push it along in the algorithm. Now, as sad as it is to say, I did have to cut down from the interviews. I think I had somewhere in the area of like 45 minutes of content, maybe even longer than that. And a lot of it was just irrelevant for the purpose of this video. But if you're interested about that content and you want to still see it, then head over to my new Ko-fi link in the description. And before you freak out, there's just one tier. It is only $1 a month forever, at least as far as I'm currently planning. And that's because I only expect to put out about $12 worth of content a year, and charging any more than $1 a month sounded a little unfair to me. So that's all there is. One tier, $1 a month, gets you access to these interviews, and it's also going to get you access to any other kind of behind the scenes I have, any polls I might have, as well as having your name displayed at the end of every video. You know, the standard patron thing. Although that said, I am considering a special seat limited tier. I haven't worked out the pricing of it yet, but the idea is that you'd subscribe for a month and then you'd unsubscribe, kind of like a revolving door. And the idea is that for 1 hour a month, I'll set aside time and I'll QA and critique a game that you're currently working on. So if you are interested in it, let me know in the comments below. Now, I'm not going to sit there and spell out all of the ideas you can get from these interviews in this video. That's not the point of this. Everyone is on their own video game development journey. So my hope is that you can take what is discussed here, filter it through your own personal experiences, and then apply it to how you make video games. For me personally, they've actually helped to inspire an idea for Lair Keeper. You see, one of my favorite board games is Super Boss Monster, right here. This behemoth, this is a giant box. I love it. And its premise is very similar to Lair Keeper. I realize that in retrospect. You're a dungeon boss building a lair to lure hapless adventurers to, and then you unalive them to be YouTuber friendly. And so there's a lot of parallels between this board game and what Lair Keeper is ultimately becoming. As a result, there's a lot of ideas in here that I can take and apply directly to Lair Keeper, and that's exactly what I'm currently doing. But I'm not ready to showcase that just yet, so stay tuned if you're interested in following the development of Lair Keeper. Trust me, the videos are coming. So bringing it all back, one of the hardest things in game development is coming up with a great idea for your game. But maybe the idea isn't to come up with a new idea, but instead to borrow an existing idea from an adjacent medium. Anyhow, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoy your holidays, and I'll see you in the new year.